Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Absolutely. So, I was really moved by, especially I've seen several things, the Invictus with, members of the New York Phil, the Met, and Jazz at Lincoln Center, but also this, smaller piece, chamber music called Gravity, that's been played all over New York, and it was just beautiful and powerful, and it gave me a glimpse into pain and hopefulness and just all of that. But of course, there's no better way to actually talk about that than to actually talk to the person that wrote it. So, just curious about the process of that piece, and maybe, how it came to be, what you felt during the process, anything you want to share with us about it.
Yeah, Jeff, the first word that comes to mind with writing this piece was humbling. It was a very, very humbling experience. And I often found myself driving around the city and watching people in their different neighborhoods with their families, with their friends, being alone and stuff like that, and just trying to see the energy that was surrounding them during these hard times. So I would take those emotions that I experienced from seeing people, and then add that onto my own experiences during these weird times. And I would drive up to the middle of the woods in Tarrytown, New York, and just would sit and think.
I heard and hear, gospel, and all kinds of different styles of music. And I'm not going to answer this for you, so I'll let you say, what were those influences? Because there's a lot packed into the style of that. You can tell what you've been inspired by. So what are those styles?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I wanted to include was jazz. This the harmonic structure of jazz, if you will, at the beginning. I always felt that listening to pieces by John Coltrane, or even Miles Davis and Wayne Shorter, something about the music that they wrote, especially when they were in New York and stuff like that. The harmonic structure of it sort of really paints this to me, this picture of depth, breadth, but also this needing to push forward a little bit. So I wanted to include that, but then also the fact that I'm producing a lot of hip hop and popular music right now. I think that those styles sort of inserted themselves automatically. In fact, there's one section in the fast section that goes boom ba ba beep boom ba ba beep beep ba ba boom ba ba beep boom ba da ba 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 ba, which is, it's very groovy, but the way that I sort of structure it, I do sort of a repeat that sort of harkens back to like the hook of a pop music song.
We work so hard as musicians. It's a lot of hard work, just training to do what we do. And we spend all these hours working on the craft, to be able to give our art. And then you get these experiences with, some of the greatest musicians in the world, of the Met Orchestra, the Jazz at Lincoln Center, and the New York Philharmonic, and you even conducted them. I mean, what's that like to get to this point where, all these amazing musicians are playing your music?
Man, it's really cool. It's really, 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 really freaking cool. And like you say, the thing is, I was a trombone player, for so long, and coming from Mississippi, to Alabama to New York, and like you say, sort of always knowing about these musicians and idolizing the musicians, but also the organizations, and being in front of these musicians, conducting them, was surreal. It was completely surreal.
And why don't we bring in one of those performers? There was a performer that worked both on Invictus and on Gravity, and I think arguably the greatest trumpet player in the world, who also is probably one of the most dedicated to education and music and art for young people, and grew up in that part, is a big friend of Midwest. So let's bring in Chris Martin, principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic.
It's good to see you, and it's an interesting year for everybody, especially in the music world. And I know the Midwest is a little different than usual, but it's still great to be here and see everybody.
I was so inspired, and it's been great to catch up with Anthony, to see these performances of both his Invictus that was done through Lincoln Center, and then Gravity through the New York Philharmonic. And I just wondered if, and I know both experiences were two different things, if you wanted to maybe highlight anything from those two experiences that you'd want to share with folks.
Sure. Those they were very different experiences, but a lot of similarities in that, Anthony's music, it really connects with people. It connects with the players, and it connects with the people listening. And both of those pieces, Invictus and Gravity, were perfect examples of his writing. For us as players, they're fun to play. They're infectious in their groove and in their melody, and for the people listening, when we played in the bandwagon, the quintet's playing and we're enjoying it and having a great time together, being finally together and playing this awesome music. And then you look out and you see people walking down the sidewalk and they stop and they listen, and these people are probably never before and never again are going to come to a concert at Lincoln Center, but they connected, and you could just kind of groove and get into it, and they just forget that, they forget what's going on in their life, what's going on in the world, and it was a beautiful thing. It really was a beautiful thing. That's what we live for as musicians, and that's what we've been so sorely lacking. And I was grateful to be there at all, but then to be there and to be able to bring this piece to life of Mr. Barfield's was a real pleasure and a real honor.
I know you and Anthony are probably going to also collaborate on some future projects, and just wondered if both of you might talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm learning the accordion, so he's going to write a piece for me. I'm pretty excited.
It's going to be accordion and electronics.
Yes. That's a as yet unplumbed well of creativity. Yeah, so I've loved Anthony's music for a long time, and I noticed that there's he's great with the low brass, but the trumpet, we need a trumpet piece. We need a great trumpet piece. So I'm hoping to hear publicly with Midwest lean on him to give us an awesome trumpet piece for our repertoire, because we could use your voice.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I mean, I've been wanting to write a piece specifically for trumpet, for a while now, but, to have you, the best trumpet player in the world, one of the best trumpet players in the world, to want to have a project. I mean, that's fantastic. And I'm very excited to be able to, to work with you to bring it to life. But it's interesting, working with you, during, obviously, like we were talking about the Invictus video as well as Gravity. I obviously have been to concerts before to, hear you're playing, and I've heard, through the grapevine how amazing you are. But being able to work with you in person gave me, a little bit of a different perspective of your abilities, but even more importantly, getting to know you as a person. It's just been so incredible. That's definitely going to influence the way that I write this piece. So I'm excited about whatever comes.
As am I. I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait. I can't wait to collaborate with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think one of the most powerful parts of, that really drew me to Gravity was, all the things that we're experiencing now, and with racial inequality and social justice and Black Lives Matter, and there's just so much going on surrounding that right now, and how to take that, the poem Langston Hughes, and then having Anthony narrate part of that. It was really powerful. And I wondered if through that whole experience, and maybe sharing that with people, Chris, if there was anything about that part of it that stood out to you.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And that, that Langston Hughes poem has stuck with me since the first time I heard it when I think I was 15 years old, in high school. And when I didn't realize that it was so seminal in your composition of the piece. But as soon as you read it aloud to us before we played it the first time, it immediately clicked to me. And I just that piece to me, listening, looking at the score and then playing it together with the group the first time, and then even at the last performance, it's constantly about things pulling apart, tearing away from each other, and then still getting pulled back in a really beautiful way. Sometimes not so easy way, maybe with some pain. But I just felt constantly in that piece this idea that things are tearing away, pushing away, but then we always get drawn back together. And it was just I don't know, it's the right voice, the right vibe, the right message for this time we've been living in.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I mean, that was one of the things I felt was very important about writing this piece, is to do something that would actually resonate with New York right now. I mean, America right now, the world right now. The fact that as you're mentioning, this tension, this pushing and pulling, the fact that it's like the wheels are spinning, but there's really no motion. We're still technically in this pandemic, although things are starting to open back up. And to capture that, I felt it was very important. But in terms of the poem, similar situation, Chris. I've known this poem, since I was a kid, and it's definitely always been powerful in my life. But having this opportunity to write a piece that's, once again, specifically for New York right now, COVID and Black Lives Matter, it just made sense. The fact that and this is something that I talked about. So just so you know, Jeffrey, before every performance of the piece, I would actually get on the back of the bandwagon truck and speak and read the poem. And one of the things I explained to the listeners is that much like the poem suggests, what happens to a dream deferred, all of our dreams have been put on hold and deferred for a while, and so, once again, what happens whenever our dreams and lives are put on hold? We have all of these things that are happening that we want to happen, but then at the end, the question is, or does that dream explode? And at that point in the piece, I go to the fast section to sort of try to, as Chris mentioned, wonderfully mentioned, this pushing and pulling, the fact that you do have this undertone of like, yes, things are actually great, but at the same time, this chaotic situation is happening. But it was definitely, really amazing to be able to, hear the quintet perform it. But again, as Chris mentioned, being out in the audience and seeing New Yorkers vibing out to it was really something that was really special. I can't really put it into words. We think about, it's interesting thinking about it now. I would get emails and see on social media New York Philharmonic performances, Met performances, what have you around the city. But having that stripped away from the city, from the musicians, from the audience members, is something that is very tragic. And for that small snapshot in time, to see that happening in real time, art being brought back to the city, and being as one of my neighbors, she explained it. She said it was balm for the soul that is longing for art. And to hear that, was just, and to see that, once again, see people resonating with that was just, incredible.
I remember there was one of the, maybe the last performance we did down under the Brooklyn Bridge. There's a little public space there right on the river, and there was a group of about 5 people, maybe in their like late 20s, early 30s, and I was listening to them talk a little bit while we're setting up, and I think they're from the UK, and they were checking it out, and they were just kind of sitting trying to decide if they were going to stay, and they ended up staying, and they enjoyed everything, but I could tell because they were 10 feet away, that when we started playing Gravity, they were just like, they sort of perked up, and then when we hit that groove that I love so much, that I compared to to Timberland, I just saw them. They're just like, they really got in it and really felt it, and that held them the whole rest of the show. So
yeah, so the video he's talking about, everybody, is So there is a YouTube video of the producer Timbaland playing beats for Jay-Z way back when, I think in the early 2000s or late 1990s. And Jay-Z's expression after hearing like the beats, he was like, oh, oh, oh. And so during the fast section, and most of you who have heard my music, you know, I do have a tendency to incorporate a lot of hip hop rhythms and stuff like that. And there's one section where I, you know, boom, ba ba beep, boom, ba 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 beep, boom, ba boom, ba ba beep, da 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 da, and I get this text from Chris, and he's like, "Man, you remember this video, this Timbaland Jay-Z video? I had that reaction when I heard that spot, and I was like, okay, this is great, this is
I
dope."
was literally like, I was listening to your MIDI file on my computer and it's sitting right here, and I was like, oh, brass quintet. All right, let's play it. Let's do it.
That's good. Yeah, but you know, continue what you're saying about, you know, those people from the UK and stuff like that. You know, the thing is, of course, as a composer, you know, we can go a lot of different directions with the style that we write in. And of course, I could have totally wrote something that was atonal or not as tonal to the ear, which would have been fine. But I felt that specifically right now, because we once again are in these hard times, and then secondly, the fact that the bandwagon was going around to locations in the city that are comprised of people who may not necessarily go to a concert hall and listen to classical music. What do you do in a situation like that? Do you give them something that they can't really walk away humming, or that in the moment they're totally confused? Not saying, once again, not saying there's anything wrong with going that direction, but I felt it was important for this piece to give them something that they could easily remember, so they could take back to their locations and be uplifted during a time where they don't have work or they don't have art.
Was there any close, Chris, to that story about the UK group? Or I can't remember. You got to the end of it, I think, and then
Yeah,
and then
well, no,
Anthony.
I can close it. I mean, I can close it out
Okay.
just to say that they were sitting, and there's always a wall, invisible wall between audience and musicians. Often that's the case. At Geffen, where we play at Lincoln Center, normally there's a huge space between the stage and the audience, and then there's like an 8-foot drop. So like if you want to connect with them, you risk spraining your ankle if you want to even try and talk to an audience member. But here it's gone. We had a little bit of space for safety that the health and safety guidelines were followed, but we were right there. I mean, we could. So I chatted with them like briefly, just with these folks, just said hey to them afterward. But then after that, after the show was over, they looked us right in the eye, and I looked at them right in the eye, and they said, thank you guys so much. I hope you please come back and do this again, and we'll be here. And it really meant a lot to us. I remember they said, and that it's what Anthony said. Music is a gift live music is a gift that we've all been deprived of now for a long time, and we were able to give that to these I don't know who they are. Maybe they live here, maybe they're tourists who are stuck here for a long time, but that to have that connection in such an intimate way, I think if we'd played some 20th century, some hardcore 20th century Ingolf Dahl or some Malcolm Arnold, or, they would have been into it. I think they would have appreciated it, but I don't think they would have felt emotionally such a connection to the music and to the experience as they did that day.
The audience that's going to be listening to this, it's college teachers, but a huge amount of public school teachers and people that lead music programs around the country and really around the world. And, with all of this that's going on, anything that you could tell them that would help them, and even thinking about programming music of women composers or composers of color, or just about, dealing with all the things that are going on now. Any advice for them?
It's a really hard question. I mean, I think the one advantage we have as musicians and as people who are in love with music is that we listen, And that's our first love. Is I love to play, but I really love to listen. And I you know, what I am continually learning and am humbled by is the desperate need for all of us to listen to each other more, and especially people who are in positions of authority and in positions of power over others, to really listen, to just shut your mouth and listen and be honest and acknowledge all the things you thought you knew and you were wrong, or the things you never began to imagine. And when it comes to, just to bring it back to our little world of music, I'll confess that I was ignorant and had no idea how little music we had that wasn't written by white guys, even in the brass world. And I confess that I was ashamed when I realized. And so I think it's really, I'm horrified by this moment, as we all are in so many ways, but I'm really hopeful that we can turn it into a real opportunity for meaningful change and real progress, of course, in the world and in the ways that matter most, in health and safety and education and respect and dignity. But in our little world, I really hope we turn this into a chance to truly be open-minded and be as open and as loving for music and to the exclusion of all else as we think we were 6 months ago.
Yeah. It is very interesting. I couldn't have said it better, Chris. Honestly, personally speaking, I'm excited about the future for people of color and women composers, artists, musicians, because once again, I feel like people are at the point where they're finally able to listen, as Chris suggested. I've been in conversations with a couple of organizations and orchestras. I'm not going to say the name yet because it's not in stone, but I do know for a fact that one orchestra specifically, United States, have said that moving forward, their plan is to program a woman composer or a person of color composer on every concert. So it's things like that I think is a pretty good start to just to introduce these voices to audiences.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
I've just been reading a little bit of like the work that Philip Ewell has done for so many years writing, and he often quotes, I think it was Dvorak who had said that after he came to the States and spent time here, wrote here and wrote about America famously, and left, his quote that that America was going to redefine what classical music was, what musical theory was as it was taught traditionally, and that it hasn't really been allowed to happen, at least on an institutional academic level, at the highest sort of ivory tower echelons. And it seems like the really exciting thing now is that could really be that change that's happened without that, the change that's happened through jazz and through hip hop and through all these and through all of these voices in America, that could actually be somehow owned, at the highest level. To me, that's such an exciting possibility of this time.
Absolutely.
That our kids and our grandkids, they'll learn about Beethoven and all that, but it won't stop with like Schoenberg and there's a whole vocabulary. There's an entire there's an entire new set of theory and how to compose and how to think of music.
Absolutely.
This country has created, and maybe now it'll finally be recognized.
Absolutely.
Well, this is some amazing insight, and I so have I've known Anthony for a few years, and I've known of Chris forever, and just both of you have this striking humility and love for other humans and for music, and it's inspiring to hear you both talk, and I appreciate the time you took to talk to the Midwest audience today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.